the 30th committee meeting of the Health Committee.
Quinn Anishinaabe peoples. Today's meeting is actually taking place in a non-hybrid format for a change, and I want to remind participants of the following points. Wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. For those participating, please mute your mics so we don't have interference. And again, for those of you who wish to, on the console in front of you, you will see that there is English-French origin, so you know what to do there. And then I think we need to say that all comments should be addressed through the chair. For members in the room, you know the drill. If you want to speak, put up your hands. The clerk and I will try to figure out whose hands were up first between us, and we will go ahead with it in that order. Pursuant to Standing Order 108.2 and the motion adopted by the committee on Tuesday, September the 23rd, 2025, the committee will begin its study of its study of the Canada's pharmaceutical sovereignty, and I want to welcome the witnesses who are here to speak to that. And they are Glenn Thibault, Executive Director, Government Affairs, Advocacy and Policy, from Health Pro Canada, Christine Donaldson, President and Chief Executive Officer, and Denis Leclerc, Director and Full Professor, CHU du Québec, Université Laval. And so we will begin. And here's how it goes. Each of you will have 5 minutes. I will literally shout out a minute when you have a minute left, and then 30 seconds just to give you a chance to wrap up. If you cannot finish what you said, you would be able to expand on it during the question and answer session. So do not panic. And so now we will begin with Mr. Thibault for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Members of the committee, thank you for the time to speak to you today. Millions of people in Canada wake up every morning dependent on diabetes medications, which includes insulin, a life-saving medication discovered here in Canada. Sir Frederick Banting, alongside fellow Canadian scientists Charles Bess and James Collip, changed the world from a lab in Toronto. Banting House in London, Ontario, and I extend an open invitation to all of you to come for a visit, stands as a national historic site marking the place where Banting first thought of taking insulin from a pancreas to treat diabetes. Sir Banting is a Canadian hero. Yet today, we do not manufacture a single vial of insulin domestically. That is a failure. That is not a failure of science. That is a failure of will. Despite insulin having been discovered here, Canada remains entirely dependent on foreign manufacturers. And when shortages occur, we have no enforceable mechanism to prioritize Canadians. In 2024, for example, Canada faced a critical shortage of injectable glucagon, a life-saving emergency treatment for severe hypoglycemia. Emergency importation from the United States was required and still is. That is a short-term workaround, not a resilient strategy. That shortage was a warning, a stress test that we failed. Another example, as recently as last month, a small group of Canadians living with type 1 diabetes were about to lose access to animal insulin, the only kind their bodies can tolerate. As the foreign company that manufactures and distributes it in Canada was about to discontinue it altogether, it took those families going public with their story in the media for a solution, albeit still a temporary one, to be reached. A federal government program, one we all know, is PharmaCare. It has helped improve access and affordability, and that matters. But affordability policy is not the same as availability policy. PharmaCare does not secure upstream supply, it does not manufacture medicines, and it does not guarantee availability in global distribution. PharmaCare is a pillar program of the federal government, and its success depends on a stable domestic supply of medicine it covers. A national pharmacare program cannot function effectively if we remain entirely dependent on foreign manufacturers for its most fundamental input. Supply disruptions or allocation decisions made abroad could undermine the entire program's credibility and leave vulnerable populations without access to covered medications. So the bottom line, in matters of health security, availability must come first. So let me be clear, pharmaceutical sovereignty is not about isolation. It is about resilience. It is about preparedness. And it's about the duty of a nation to protect its people. Without domestic manufacturing capacity, Canada has no mechanism to prioritize its own population's needs over international demand. We have no control, we have no leverage, and we have no guarantee that when the next crisis hits, our patients will have access to the medications they need. President Trump's threats of tariffs on pharmaceuticals, his most favored nation policy, as well as U.S. state importation programs are actively competing for Canadian medications. As U.S. states seek lower-cost drugs from Canada, they can create competing demand for products manufactured through Canadian channels, diverting supply away from our patients and creating unpredictable shortages. Global supply chain fragility means that decisions made in foreign boardrooms during crises we do not control directly impact the health of Canadians. But here's what gives me hope. We are not starting from scratch. Even, for example, Canada's new defense industrial strategy explicitly recognizes life sciences as a critical sector. Pardon? 1 minute?
30
seconds.
Yeah.
Wow, okay. So that Canadian Defence Industrial Strategy can really play a policy instrument in helping us with domestic pharmaceutical manufacturing. And so with that, I think the irony is insulin was discovered by Canadians and Canadian scientists in 1920, profoundly changing the lives of every person living with diabetes globally thereafter. And I think we have an opportunity here to really work together to protect our own sovereignty, protect our own supply, and make sure that the diabetes community continues to work with Parliament to solve this issue. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thibault. And then I go to Health Pro Canada, Christine Donaldson, for 5 minutes, please, Ms. Donaldson.
Thank you. Chair, Vice Chairs, and honourable members of the committee, I thank you for this opportunity to appear today. My name is Christine Donaldson, and I am the President and CEO of Health Pro Canada. We are a national, member-owned group purchasing organization that serves more than 2,100 hospitals and healthcare organizations across the country. We help procure approximately $1 billion in pharmaceuticals each year, partnering with 50 pharmaceutical suppliers across the globe on behalf of the Canadian healthcare system. In addition, I myself am a hospital pharmacist, so I have a very strong investment in what we're talking about today and have experienced many medication shortages firsthand. The recommendations I'm bringing to you today is informed by my experience, my role at Health Pro Canada, as well as the input from over 20 pharmacy leaders from across the country who gave their input to our recommendations. I am sure we would all agree that any conversation about pharmaceutical needs needs to be grounded in uninterrupted patient access to essential medicines. It is our position that today Canada is not currently well positioned to pursue full pharmaceutical self-sufficiency. Thus, a sustainable and realistic pharmaceutical strategy must prioritize pursuing domestic manufacturing, but it has to be strategic for critical medications, updating public procurement to prioritize both reliability and redundancy, creating more regulatory agility to incentivize pharmaceutical manufacturing here in Canada, enhancing coordinated data sharing on a national level, and aligning policy across manufacturing and innovation. In recent years, Canada has experienced repeated shortages of many medications, including those that are hospital-based. These are not theoretical risks. While supply becomes unpredictable, hospitals are forced into buying alternative products and rationing these, which obviously brings increased risk and can compromise continuity of care. Think back to that shortage of pediatric Tylenol that caused risk to our most vulnerable patients, children, and undue stress for parents across the country. HealthPro's experience shows that Canada currently relies heavily on global supply and has limited redundancy. Pharmaceutical manufacturing is capital intensive and depends on sufficient scale across multiple product classes. Replicating end-to-end capacity across all medicines would require substantial investment and volumes that Canada simply does not have across our relatively small population. Thus, domestic manufacturing must be strategic and must focus on medicines that pose the greatest clinical and system risk. This includes sterile injectables, antimicrobials, emergency and critical care medicines, and high-volume hospital products. Health Canada's recently published Critical and Vulnerable Drug List provides an important evidence-based foundation for this prioritization. This targeted approach both strengthens and builds resilience where it matters most, without introducing inefficiencies or escalating costs. Traditional procurement models have often emphasized immediate savings, but the price alone does not reflect the true cost across the whole system. Procurement can and should incorporate risk-adjusted criteria such as reliability, redundancy, sustainability, and domestic capability. These criteria can remain fully trade compliant while encouraging manufacturers to invest in more resilient production and strengthen our supply chain overall. Manufacturers consistently cite that regulatory uncertainty and long approval timelines are barriers to investing in Canada or bringing alternatives to market. So priority review of those clinical and critical and shortage-prone medications would align with our trusted international regulators and help bring forward expedited pathways for alternative suppliers during these disruptions.
1 minute.
So we know that data is also fragmented across the jurisdictions and many supply chain actors, limiting our ability to anticipate shortages before they escalate. So we believe that improved standardized data sharing across all stakeholders, including organizations such as HealthPro Canada, would enable earlier intervention, better forecasting, and more proactive mitigation. Finally, pharmaceutical sovereignty requires alignment among manufacturing, health policy, and innovation. So we see that investment in domestic capability is far more effective than when it's paired together with predictable procurement signals, regulatory agility, and a clear understanding of those clinical priorities. In closing, Chair and members, pharmaceutical sovereignty is not about choosing domestic production over global sourcing. The most resilient and cost-effective path is a balanced one, combining both strategic domestic capacity and diversified global supply supported by a coordinated national policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Donaldson. I now go to Vaccinergy. Michel Leclerc. 5 minutes,
merci.
please.
Bonjour à tous.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for welcoming me today. Well, who is Vaccinergy? This is a network of academic researchers specializing in vaccine development. It's recently funded by Médicaments Québec, and it is here in Montreal, and it's expert in vaccine development. So what's our mission? We are here to meet the preclinical development needs of vaccines and therapeutic proteins. Our client base is mainly small and medium-sized enterprises and researcher entrepreneurs. All of our services are based on rigorous quality control, and they are necessary for regulatory rules. That is why we're distinguished from other research organizations, and we're very close to industry standards. So I want to present to you what we do at the ecosystem. So we're going to give you 4 concrete examples and how they can be useful. The first example concerns Dr. Sauvageau, who is a clinician who was interested in HPV and was working with the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, to do serological tests for vaccination of patients in Canada. CDC has ended its collaboration with its Canadian partners, so the problem now is that Dr. Sauvageau no longer has access to those services, and there is no recognized serology service for HPV in Canada. So we have a problem. So Vaccinergy and I work together, we work together to make sure that Vaccinergy can become a partner with Dr. Sauvageau for HPV serology in Canada. We hope that we'll have some good news with respect to the financing of this program. But the intention for us is that to provide this service at the international level, even to Americans, because the CDC is overwhelmed. So this is a concrete example where Vaccinergy has intervened to continue to help Canada have some pharmaceutical sovereignty. My second example concerns a small and medium-sized enterprise known as Glycovax Pharma. They consulted us to resolve a challenge related to the manufacturing process of its vaccine platform. So joint funding between Glycovax and NSERC has enabled the purification process to be simplified. And the advantage for Glycovax is that they have access to cutting-edge expertise at an affordable cost without the need to hire additional staff. And it also helped, as I said, the reduction of production costs. Example 3, still with a small and medium-sized enterprise. In a different context, they submitted a letter of intent to apply for the Canadian government's Biomedical Countermeasures Initiative program. So Vaccinergy will be responsible for elucidating the mechanisms of action of an adjuvant and evaluating its potential for the prevention of viral and bacterial respiratory diseases. The project will allow this SME find new partners with respect to respiratory diseases in a pandemic context. So here, Vaccinergy will contribute to help a small and medium-sized enterprise in Canada to develop new products. Fourth example affects a university researcher. Here I'm talking about Dr. Tessier in University Laval. He discovered a promising anti-cancer protein. But the problem that Dr. Tessier has is that the production levels are insufficient by a factor of 1,000, the production of this protein. The outcome is that a new patent was filed, a biotech company was established, and a licensing agreement was signed with University of Laval. And so Vaccinergy here ensured that there would be the transition of a new medication into the commercial space. Also, so we are also able to train students, and as such, we're able to maintain companies like Aramis Biotechnologies in Quebec. They're working in the vaccine sector. So this is just the beginning. We were created a few months ago, and we believe that Vaccinergy would play an important role in ensuring the emergence of new vaccines and therapeutics in Canada. Our survival will depend on government funding and the revenue that will be generated by our activities, with the hope of becoming financially independent in 4 or 5 years. Thank you.
I now go to the question and answer session. Just for explanation, you have a 6-minute question and answer to start off, then there are 5-minute question and answers. The 6 minutes and the 5 minutes include question and answer. So please be as succinct as you can. And to do that, I begin with a 6-minute round, starting with Ms. Conans from the Conservatives. 6 minutes, Helena.
Thank you, Chair. My first questions are for Ms. Donaldson. Thank you so much for being here today. You were quoted last week in an article in Bloomberg entitled "Why Canada's Healthcare System is Eyeing the Global Helium Shortage Closely." Helium is vital for the usage of MRI scans, and there's no hospital in the country that can go without medical imaging. Shipping constraints through the Strait of Hormuz and damage to production facilities in Qatar have essentially cut off 1/3 of the world's helium supply. Now, you told Bloomberg there's no system-wide shortage, yet you said that there seems to be targeted pressure, and this is now the 5th worldwide helium shortage in 2 decades. My question is twofold. First, what are those targeted pressures that you mentioned? And if the conflict in the Middle East persists, how long will it take for Canada to see shortages in helium?
Question. At this point, I would like just to reiterate that Health Pro Canada has certain helium contracts for hospitals. Some of them are used for medical gases, and as you said, there is a product that is used in MRI machines. At this point, one of the producers has put out a notice that there is a 50% allocation for a certain type of liquid helium. We have been working with that producer very carefully to ensure that medical grade or medical usage of helium is being prioritized. In other words, there's many uses of helium, and all recipients or users of helium receive the same notice. Secondly, we do have a diversification strategy with helium ourselves. Health Pro Canada, we often try to do a very unique strategy with contracts called a multi-supplier strategy, and that allows us to award a contract to more than one producer, and that keeps them healthy in the Canadian market. So in this case, we do have two producers, one that is based out of Qatar, as you mentioned, and one that is based in North America. So that is one of our strategies, and we've been working to diversify and, again, prioritize medical gases here in the country. So I do not have a strict answer for you about the timing. I think that is still something we're working very carefully with suppliers to determine.
So at this point, there hasn't been a noticeable change in the availability of helium for medical imaging, but that could change in the near future, is what you're saying.
I do not have any line of sight as to when that could change, yes.
Canada has the world's fifth largest helium resources, estimated at 7 billion cubic feet. However, we have no liquidation facilities in Canada, so we're completely reliant on shipping it to the United States. Provinces like Alberta and Saskatchewan want to change this, but federal taxes and red tape are limiting the company's willingness to invest in liquidation plants. So, first, would having helium liquidation plants help to end our reliance on Qatar or the United States for medical helium? And if so, and also, do you support federal tax changes to make this happen?
Thank you for your question. I unfortunately do not have very much of an interaction with that supplier that is domestically based. I think your question is a thoughtful one, and I believe that the province of Saskatchewan is actively, their Minister of Energy is actively looking into those strategies. And we have an open market opportunity within all of our contracts that encourages domestic production wherever we can to enter into a formal contract with Health Pro Canada.
Thank you. My next question is for Glenn Thibeault. Mr. Thibeault. Mr. Thibeault, Canada's drug agency recently recommended public health plans should cover Mounjaro for type 2 diabetes. Mounjaro is like Ozempic in its usage as a weight loss drug in other countries. We know generic forms of Ozempic are currently under review as well. What challenges should we be aware of on behalf of the diabetic community's access and supply to Mounjaro and Ozempic, if they will end up inevitably being more likely to be used for weight loss than diabetes?
Thank you for the question. So through you, Chair, there's, I think, quite a few concerns that we should be flagging when it comes to even generic GLP-1s. From Ozempic to Mounjaro. The important thing I think to recognize here is I'm very concerned about online pharmaceutical sales and that cost of Canada having a lower cost for these medicines. That we've seen this before where prescriptions happening in British Columbia being filled in Nova Scotia and 17,000 of them going to the States. When we have these at a lower level, we could see a shortage of those products for Canadians. And I think if you talk to the pharmaceutical companies that are involved in this and the patient voice, we're all really concerned and raising the flag here at a committee like today to say, well, let's find ways to protect Canadian supply to make sure that the cost is then the lower cost is then inferred on Canadians and not shared globally. So
would you say that you're worried about it being sent to other countries as opposed to being used as a weight loss drug?
Yeah, off-label usage is something for the person and their healthcare provider. The loss of it, I think, is more important.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. I now go to the Liberals for 6 minutes, please. Ms. Sidhu.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, all the witnesses, for coming here. My first question to Mr. Thibault. I was proud to help advance Canada's national diabetes framework, and thank you, Diabetes Canada, to support on this bill. Now it's law. You raised that questions, the life-saving insulin shortage, drug shortage, continue to affect patients across the country. What are the main factors behind shortage from your perspective, and what should the federal government be doing differently to help prevent them, if you can give any advice on that?
Sure. So thank you for the question through you, Chair. First off, I think it's important to say that diabetes is a nonpartisan chronic condition, and with that I want to thank you for your leadership in organizing the Diabetes Caucus and bringing all MPs from all different parties to talk about the issue. So thank you for your leadership on that. When it comes to shortages, we've seen shortages with Ozempic. They came in relation to the plastics and not necessarily the manufacturing of the medicine, but of that process. And so making sure that, there is an opportunity for supply to be created from beginning to end, and doing that here in Canada, because we are reliant on having products shipped in from the U.S. or from other places. So looking at having our own domestic supply, I think, will be key. I utilized and talked a little bit about in my opening statement about the new Canada's Defence Industrial Strategy, and everyone's asking me, why is a health charity looking at the Defence Industrial Strategy? It's because there's a life sciences fund in there. And that life sciences fund can do a few things, right? We can provide capital investment for domestic insulin manufacturing facilities, procurement guarantees, long-term supply contracts that can create predictable demand. Those are the things that we would like to see to ensure that diabetes can get to everybody in this country, because we have over 4 million people who are already diagnosed with diabetes in this country. The numbers for pre-diabetes makes that number jump anywhere between 10 to 12 million people. So there's a lot of things that we can do, and I think the government has the tools necessary to be able to act right now.
Canada has strong research capabilities, highly skilled workforce, and is known for having a well-respected regulatory system too. But yet stakeholder continues to tell us there's room to improve. If you can give a recommendation, like which sector we can improve, so we can, because we are heavily relies on imports, foreign imports for innovative medicines. So we cannot rely on the others, so we can be self-sufficient in our country.
Yeah. Again, thank you for the question through you, Chair. I think there's an opportunity for us to align pharmaceutical sovereignty with this industrial strategy that can create high-skilled jobs. We can strengthen domestic capacity. We can advance Canadian innovation. And I do think it's very important for us to honor the legacy of the scientists who gifted insulin to the world. So I know I'm very focused on diabetes medications, but again, this is something that can apply to all medications. And I think what we're looking for now is the political will to implement these type of frameworks that we've all talked about, let alone the diabetes framework, but from the Canadian Defence Industrial Strategy to other kind of opportunities that I even think about coming from Sudbury, right? We'd always talk about critical minerals. We really could look at critical minerals and compare that to medicines, and then make sure that the medicines that Canadians depend on every single day are actually produced and manufactured here, so we can make sure that we can control what happens if and when the next crisis or shortage happens. So there's plenty of opportunities, and I think there are frameworks currently in place that we should be looking at and utilizing to make sure that we don't have to go through another shortage here in Canada.
1 minute, 26 seconds.
Okay, so now my next question is to Mr. Olson. From your perspective, what are the biggest supply chain vulnerabilities for Canada right now, and what should the government to do to improve those?
Thank you for your question. I do believe that the vulnerabilities today can be addressed through a national and a coordinated policy and a framework. As I mentioned in my remarks, there is an opportunity to focus on critical and vulnerable medications. And again, Health Canada has had some leadership in this area. We have a vested interest as a provider to hospitals and healthcare organizations, as many of those products on that list are injectable medications, and they're life-saving. When you think about it, why do you present to an emergency room? Because nothing else will help you get through that acute or life-threatening illness that you're facing. So I think we have a really opportunistic time to collaborate together and to look at what information we have, the experiences that we can share, and also the data. I think the government could really help with us in coordinating and pulling together those key stakeholders who can provide the intel on the data that we own today that can point us in the right direction to, again, strategize and invest in the smart procurement strategies. And I always like to say that we use procurement as a gateway. We can use it as a really important economic reason to make the right decisions.
I know. I just called it. Thank you very much. Okay. Now I'm going to go to the bloc. Monsieur Blanchette-Jonca for 6 minutes, please.
Présidente, je salue les témoins qui sont avec nous aujourd'hui.
Thank you. I welcome the witnesses here. My first question is to Mr. Leclerc. I first want to underscore all of the work that you're doing with your organization. In a few months, you have done quite some work. You have shown some examples. You have demonstrated that in Quebec, we can have developed expertise and know-how and even have strategic capacity at a very high level. You gave concrete example of what your company can develop. So what is lacking for you today, do you think, to transform that into a sustainable and self-sustaining capacity? Answer: it's not complicated, it's financing. The expertise is there, it's been there for a while, and it's with the financing from Médicaments Québec, we were able to concretize this expertise and to work together. This is why all of this makes sense only if this financing lasts over time. That is where we're going to see the benefits of this investment. If we continue to support such initiatives over 10 years and tens of years, we will see major benefits emerging for Canadians at large. And it's examples like Vaccinergy that would become the norm eventually and sustainably. They will be able to self-finance their activities, and they will be able to multiply such examples. And as such, we'll be able to make quick progress, and we'll be able to stand out from all the other G7 countries. Thank you, Mr. Leclerc. I'm going to ask this question to the other side because I like to, I'm all for supporting you financially, but without that financing, what do you think Canada will not be able to do if there is the risk where you don't finance? What are the risks if you're not financed, actually? Answer: well, the risk is we will not be able to work together to address these issues. There has to be some rigor when we're working in laboratory. It requires some cost. We have to set all of that up. To work as an industry is different from the academic level. So we need financing so that we can start these initiatives. So it's very important. And in the G7, when we talk about academic research and development, Canada is not the first. It's not the largest investor in R&D. So there is a major deficit there. And it's no secret. We see a brain drain from our country to elsewhere because they easily get financing elsewhere. So if we want to keep our best brains here, we want to work on the best technologies, then we need to put in the money. Been working in this field for about 30 years now, so I speak with that experience, and that's what I've observed. Thank you. I want to react on what you have observed. Yes, Canada is not the first. It's the only country in the G7 over 20 years, in the 2000s to 2020, and even to date, that has reduced its investment in research and development among all G7 countries. We have a lot of potential, but it needs investment because we know this sector is very competitive. Beyond the development of products, you talked about your role in training. Without sustainable support, do you think that Canada will also lose its strategic position with respect to qualified trainers? Yes, all of this is interconnected. And I'm going to talk about the city of Quebec. For quite some time, there has been expertise that has been developed, and we're able to develop initiatives with the vaccine development. That is why we set up Vaccinergy in Quebec. We know that there are already 7 people who are working in that lab who were trained from Vaccinergy. Same thing with Yo Pharma that is working in the vaccine domain as well. So to set up and also to attract into our country multinational corporations that will set up shop here, it's important to have trained staff and the training of staff in vaccine development. And for that, we need to research and we need to train students and we need to show them the best laboratory practices. They need to be able to talk the language of the industry. And when they enter the industry and they have that training, and I'm proud of this, they are people who are very quickly independent and efficient. I want to rely on your experience. You have said that you have been in this field for several years. In the 2000s, we had quite some major biopharma corporations in Quebec, in the metropolitan Quebec region. So what happened? How did we lose them? I know they didn't go because there was too much snow on a Saturday afternoon. I think it's a matter of political will. If you go a little bit further back, at the time of Mr. Frappi, we were doing our own vaccines against influenza, among other things. And those pharmacies, those labs were closed in the 1980s. So if we had maintained those facilities, if we had kept them alive, if they had continued to grow, if we had continued to innovate, I'm sure they would have gotten even bigger. And I am convinced that we would have been in a better position to face and react to the 2020 pandemic. We would have been a leader to react to that. And in research, we have to maintain over time that financing if we want to get benefits from it. There's no need to quickly inject tens of millions of dollars over a short period of time and then stop the funding. It's not sustainable.
Yes, I was finished. Thank you.
Oh, you were finished? Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, bye. I'm going to go to Mr. Bailey for the Conservatives for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Will you be giving me a 1-minute warning, please?
I'll give you a warning, yes.
Thank you.
I just don't give Mr. Jean-Claude Blanchette a warning. He told me not to.
Thank you to the witnesses for joining us today. Mr. Thibault, you started out with duty of a nation is to protect its people, and that resonated with me because yesterday we learned that in the past 10 years, Canadians have paid over $275 million for health care for people that have had their refugee claim rejected. Are Canadians experiencing longer wait times for specialist care and routine diabetes management across Canada due to the rise in immigration?
Thank you for the question. Through you, Chair. I don't have that specific answer, but what I can tell you is this across the country. We all know that we don't have enough healthcare practitioners from coast to coast to coast. And every government, provincial government and the federal government is working collaboratively to try and resolve that issue. But if I had that magic wand, it would be great for us to solve it because, yes, there are people, I'm Sudbury-based, and there are people in northern communities, in northern Alberta, in northern Manitoba, and northern Ontario that can't get access to the specialists that they need. So we would encourage all governments of every level to work together to try and address that issue.
And the reason I asked the question is because with some of these people, the physicians are charging a higher rate, and we're seeing it with pressure sores and certain things that people will come from other countries and get better treatment than our own Canadians. And that's why I asked you the question. I'm going to go to another topic. When diabetes often coexists with chronic pain, has the opioid crisis compounded the pressure on patient population?
Again, thank you for the question through you, Chair. Again, that's not data that I would have access to.
And I understand that. Thank you. Pharmacare. Alberta has a really robust diabetes program. Can you tell us why Alberta was so adamant that their program was better than other provinces?
Thank you for the question through you, Chair. I think every province that has not had a bilateral agreement just yet will tell you that they would look forward to having a bilateral with the federal government. The Alberta government does have a number of medications on their formulary that does put them, I think, ahead of other provinces and territories. So, you know, do they do some great things? Absolutely. Do they need to work on other things? Absolutely. I think my friend from the block would agree that Quebec also has a very good program, very hybrid in its approach, and I think it's something that we can continue to look at. And so we're all in supporting universality when it comes to pharmacare. We think everybody in this country, no matter where you live from coast to coast to coast, should get access to the medications that you need. We're just not sure if the single payer approach is the right approach, and I think Quebec is an example to look at. With hiccups and warts and everything, there's opportunities to do things better, but pharmacare is the right approach in making sure that we can get universality for medicines.
Thank you. Mrs. Donaldson, has your industry been able to keep up with the increased demand for pharmaceuticals due to population growth?
Thank you for your question. At this point, I think we look at all patients that present to our hospitals as increased demand. And I would say that in general, we have always have a challenge when it comes to forecasting the actual demand and the true demand against what we predict. And I think there's a real opportunity here for us to look at any sort of population change or growth. Access to care is vitally important to us at Health Pro Canada, because we want to be able to reach into those far edges of the provinces, coast to coast to coast, as my colleague here has been speaking about. There's this opportunity
39 seconds.
to make sure that we are actually addressing wherever the pockets of need are.
Very quickly, I recently learned that Quebec and Ontario are the only two provinces, due to a commerce law, that can produce genetic medications. That there's a company in Alberta that would like to, but they cannot. Can you elaborate on that for me?
I'm sorry, I do not have any insight to add or commentary to that question.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Burton. I now go to Monsieur Blanchette-Joncar for 2.5 minutes, please. Sorry. I jumped the queue here. Ms. Jasek, for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for your testimony to date. As I'm sure you know, the goal of this particular study is to provide the federal government with very practical, focused recommendations in terms of how to improve our pharmaceutical sovereignty here in Canada. So I'd like to, you've given us some hints already during your testimony, but starting with you, Monsieur Thibault, could you give us one or two absolute priority areas from your perspective to assist us?
Question through you, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to put forward those recommendations. We've been very clear as looking at the opportunity that is presented through the Life Sciences Fund, through the Defense Industrial Strategy. There's $84 billion, I believe, if I got that, recall that correctly, where we could utilize those dollars to really implement a lot of the things and the recommendations that we're talking about. Again, we would like to designate insulin, glucagon, and other diabetes, essential diabetes therapies as critical medicines under a formal pharmacare, pharmaceutical sovereignty framework aligned with that strategy and that fund. Leverage that Life Sciences Fund to provide capital investment for domestic insulin manufacturing. Establish public-private partnerships with government providing strategic investment and guaranteed procurement, the same model that already works in defense and in critical minerals. Expand domestic fill finish and active pharmaceutical ingredient capacity through targeted funding and regulatory support. We would also like to see the creation of strategic reserves for essential medicines, for us, essential diabetes medicines, to buffer against supply disruptions and really implement safeguards to protect Canadian supply from competing international demand. So I think those are some of the recommendations that we would like to bring forward.
Thank you. Ms. Donaldson, perhaps you would give us your top two. I have a feeling you may want to talk a little bit about that critical, essential list, that sort of a framework. We've heard that a few times, and given your position and what you do, I imagine you have some expertise on that piece.
Thank you very much for your question. And you did hear me speak earlier about the data strategy, which I think is paramount to many of the other recommendations that we have to, again, building that transparency and that national coordination of the data that we own. But you're absolutely right. We do not have capacity to develop a fully sufficient pharmaceutical strategy here in Canada. So it is targeted. It does need to be a coordinated approach that envelops, we use words such as essential, critical, vulnerable. Often a medication could be vulnerable just based on the fact that it is a sole source or there's limited alternatives available. We saw, again, shortages with pediatric oncology medications. These are life-saving options and alternatives that we often do not have good choices beyond the first-line therapies. And no one, as a healthcare practitioner myself, the worst possible outcome is for you to know that there is a shortage that impacts your patients and that you have to go to a patient or a caregiver and explain that there has been a reason that they cannot receive the very best medication for their need. So the criticality and then as well layered onto that, the vulnerability. And I think we really are getting now into the data piece that can help drive those discussions. And then again, make sure that the investments into those strategies are very focused. And just lastly, it's all about procurement and the strategies that we use because, again, price alone should not be the driving factor. We are proud that many of our contracts at Health Pro Canada have sustainability and supply resilience and other factors built into the scoring capability so that we make sure that we have a diverse and more sustainable healthcare supply chain.
And Dr. Leclerc, you've talked already about funding. During our study on antimicrobial resistance, we heard about a push-pull mechanism in terms of incentives for companies to produce the drugs here in Canada where they're perhaps critical but also only used in small quantities. Any comments in that regard?
Yeah, well, for this, what I will say is there is a big advantage in for those companies that are involved in this is to profit from what is currently available in the university. And the investment like Médicaments Québec that we beneficiate of is something that allows us to regroup ourselves and really focus on what the company needs. And this is really where we can make a difference. So sometimes we don't need to develop a huge process. We can answer a very specific question that are needed by the company that are producing these compounds, and it could really accelerate and allow to produce these drugs faster, more easily, or accelerate the development.
Thank you, Monsieur Leclerc. That's good. We will now go to the next person on the list. That's for the bloc, Monsieur Blanquette-Joncar, for 2.5 minutes, please.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Je poursuis vers Monsieur.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question for Mr. Thibault. You have informed everyone here that there is no domestic production of insulin in Canada. I'm wondering if we want to ensure a short-term concrete gesture in terms of pharmaceutical sovereignty, what medications should we start producing locally, and should insulin be one of them?
Merci pour la question.
Thank you for the question. It's difficult for me to find the word in French. I'll give it to you in English.
Other vulnerable, my colleague, we both use a lot of the same words, absolutely should be produced here in Canada. You know, how do you tell a small child that, you know, the process they're about to go through will lead to death, which means they're going to lose their vision. They're going to, you know, have their kidneys fail. then they're going to, if they get a cut on their foot, that foot's going to turn to an abscess, and it could, then mean an amputation. That's all going to happen before they die. So not to overemphasize it, but looking at insulin, it is something that is critical for people to survive. And individuals right now, there's 60 to 100 people in this country who rely on animal insulin to survive. And the company out of the UK started to say, we're not going to be making that for you anymore. And so that was crisis for them. And we've got a small resolution, but unfortunately, we can't make it here yet in Canada. And I would like to see that changed.
Vous avez parlé de la pénurie en 2024. Est-ce que vous pouvez
You
nous
talked about shortages in 2024. Can you explain the consequences, the impacts that it had on some people? Of course, we do not hope that anybody died of that. Thank you for the question.
Shortage of glucagon, injectable glucagon, which is used in extreme cases of hypoglycemia. And what that means is, someone who's going through DKA will crash and all of the complications that come with that. And so when we have that shortage, what we've had to do is Health Canada designated as a Tier 3 shortage. And so while we were searching for that, there was panic amongst the community, understandably so. What was found was we now get our sole supply from one company in the U.S. that provides the supply for the country. They have yet to, meet the standards of, having a DIN, both official languages, right, is extremely important. And they're not meeting that. But they have us, right? Like, we don't have any other supply.
I'm sorry, but you're going well over time. Can you elaborate on that in the next question, please?
Yeah.
I'm sure the next questioner will allow you to do that.
Madame la Présidente.
So we now, yes.
Possible de permettre
Madam
au
Chair, could we maybe ask the witness to answer in writing if the answer is more complex? I would really appreciate to have more details on that answer.
Send it to the clerk and we'll send it on to the members. Thank you very much. I now go to the next person, who is Mr. Strauss, for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Thibeault, it was unknown to me until your presentation that Canada, the land in which insulin was invented, currently doesn't manufacture any insulin. So that's a pretty embarrassing fact. And I'd like to sort of dive into the root cause of that with you. And I think there might be a hint in the second story you told about animal insulin. Maybe 60 to 100 people in Canada can't tolerate anything else. And so just after you said that, I looked it up. There's a Globe and Mail article. You're quoted in it, so I imagine you've seen it. It describes how the current supplier of or the former supplier of animal insulin in Canada has modernized from providing it in vials to providing it in cartridges. And Health Canada has required them to apply to deliver, to get regulatory approval to deliver the same medicine in a different package. Would you agree with me that that seems like something Health Canada maybe should have waived for the benefit of these 60 to 100 people who've been using that medicine their whole lives?
Thank you for the question. Through you, Chair. There was a follow-up article in which Wockhardt has agreed to work with Health Canada in addressing that. So I think, the good news is we've got a short-term solution to this. I think on a broader scale is we need to start looking at these vulnerabilities and find ways that we can address that here locally. There is still a lot of unfortunate, red tape, which we all talk about in government and in politics about eliminating. And I would love to see that, finding ways to support people get the medicines that they need. Mm-hmm. And Health Canada, they've got their rules and their regs, and I understand that they need to follow that. We've got to then start listening to the people who are like, this is their lives. And there's one family where they have a 14-year-old daughter. And I know endocrinologists and others will say, we can find something for you. But how do you tell someone who lives in northern Saskatchewan who doesn't have an endocrinologist, who doesn't have a doctor? There's a bigger context that we need to have a discussion on here. So
something that was crazy to me in this story, and I only read the first article, it's $300,000 that Health Canada demands as the application fee. So the company has to provide the data to show, yes, it's the same thing in a different package. Here's our $300,000 application fee for you to even review our application. Like, that seems extraordinary, almost crazy. Would you agree with that?
So I'm sure there are rhymes and reasons why Health Canada has that in place, and we could have that discussion in maybe another study. But what I'm happy for right now is Health Canada did look at finding ways to waive all of those things to make sure that things could come into place.
The reason I bring it up is when I've had drug makers in my office to talk about how we can manufacture more drugs in Canada, they kind of say it is this regulatory process that chases them out, because if they have to put all this money up to just get regulated to sell in Canada, they're not going to put the money up to manufacture in Canada. So that's what I'm hearing from them.
Yep.
And then I know you spent some time on the Hill as a member and as a parliamentarian in the Ontario legislature. Fundamentally, is it the Minister of Health who could waive these sorts of onerous red tape type things? Like, is it you, or is it me, or is it the Minister of Health who has carriage over these sorts of problems?
So that was, thank you for the question through you, Chair. That was our next course of action in supporting these people, was to bring this to the Minister of Health and ask for some assistance in getting this waived. And I think very quickly to your first question too about insulin, right? I think we're looking at an overall picture here of we need to start looking at domestic supply and making sure that we can do it here. I don't have the answer of being able to follow the bouncing ball as to how we eliminated it, but let's make sure that we bring it back and produce it here.
Fantastic. I hope to hear from her on this topic as well. And that's all my questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm now going to go to Ms. Chi for 5 minutes, please. Ms. Chi.
Thank you to all the witnesses that had come today to testify as part of this very important study. My first question is to Ms. Donaldson. Thank you so much for coming. So I read online your company or organization does procurement on medicine, on equipment, and you also mentioned during COVID, it was very, our shortage, our supply was exposed as a big vulnerability for our country. I was just wondering, from both perspectives on medication and supply on equipment, what are some of the good lessons and takeaways that we have learned, in working with, partners and governments and working with hospitals, that we can really help strengthen that chain? And as well, what are some of the steps that you've taken or you've seen taken that has prepared us better for the next round, knock on wood, right, in case another COVID happens?
Thank you for your question. You're right, many lessons learned through any type of risk or any type of stress on our supply chain. I think that what we've done is to collaborate on a different level. I think the national agenda has changed, it has shifted. And what I mean by that is I believe that as a national organization, we do have many provinces that we work with very closely, as you said, on all kinds of critical supplies. And, it could be something that's today is a medication, tomorrow it's an OR product that we need to, a medical device. And so I think it's understanding the true source of the issue, number one. But number two, as we start to collaborate and understand and make it more predictable, one thing that our suppliers, and we've heard about, encouraging domestic suppliers, they need predictability. And so this opportunity for us to band together as a national voice and bring our volumes to the market is critical for their sustainability and as well for that demand forecast that I had mentioned earlier. That we need that planning is often why we run into these issues even during non-critical and non-crises time periods. So I think those lessons learned can continue to serve us, but it's only when we have our national strength that, and again, with the national policy, I think that will help us to reinforce that agility, some of that resiliency, and again, as we heard earlier, make it a more faster and streamlined process, particularly for those products at risk. And again, we're talking about pharmaceuticals here, but it can be many of those products as well.
Yeah, and just on the procurement side, I imagine you probably deal with the regulatory process and the policies on that side quite a bit. What are some of the things, like, we can, as a federal government, we can really concretely say we can take steps now? And what are the signals that you've received, say, oh, we are seeing some positive changes within the regulatory environment?
Thank you for that. So the positive changes, I think, would be interacting on, again, it says in a coordinated approach. So recently had engagements with HERC, the Health Emergency Readiness Canada, and I think it's still in its beginning days, but there's been quite a bit of excitement around that strategy to work with both Public Health Agency of Canada and Health Canada and take that forward in a more proactive approach than we had in the past. I think we do have tremendous experience, history. We've been in this business for 30 years, so we have data that can help assist us through many of the ups and downs of the pressures within our fragile supply chain. And I believe that working together, and again, we are very keen to continue working with the federal government and all the stakeholders that we represent. And our suppliers are really, the manufacturers are out there are keen to understand. They really do want to have a little bit more stake in the future. And I think that the risk perspective and the risk sharing has also shifted.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And Mr. Thibault, thanks so much for coming. This is part of your core advocacy, and as you mentioned, we invented insulin. We played a big part in advancing GLP-1, and you mentioned that we don't produce any of those. I think it's Canadian IP, yet we don't make money off of it, for example. And from your perspective, maybe tell us a little bit of what you see as the biggest gaps and what you can what we can do to address
30 seconds.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the question, and through you, Chair. I think we can continue to talk about how we can work together as stakeholders, patient voice, Parliament, to come together and look at the type of policies that will ensure that we're protecting the people within Canada, so we can ensure that they get the medicines that they need. So if that's inviting everyone out to Peter's Riding and come to Banting House and see where it started, and again, an open invitation for all of you to come to see that, because it truly is important. We created it, we invented it. Let's make sure that we start producing it here in Canada so that no Canadian will ever have to go without medicine that keeps them alive.
Thank you very much. I want to thank our witnesses for coming and shedding a light on what is an essential and critical issue for our patients, our constituents in this country. I want to also thank you for reminding us of our history with diabetes. We talked about Banting and Best. We have forgotten a very important Nobel Prize winner from UBC, Michael Smith, who created synthetic insulin, so we didn't have to depend on beef and pork insulin. But I just wanted to say that we are a leader, especially in diabetes, but Canada has always been a leader in biomedical sciences. We've always done the R&D, we've got it done, and you're right, what we didn't do is take it to the next stage where we manufactured it ourselves. And so we didn't make any money, we did the work, other people made money on it. But I want to just flag one thing quickly. 2 weeks ago, I was at the Minister of Industry delivered money to a small company in my riding called Aspect. They have been able to 3D imprint islets of Langerhans cells, and they can now insert it into a type 1 diabetes person at birth so they can make their own insulin. This is what Canada is doing. I want to thank you for making us feel proud today to be Canadians, and then say we as a committee should point to the next steps to make us make some money out of what we do, and make sure that you said that not just affordability, but we look at availability as being a core problem. Thank you so very much for coming. And we will until we get the next witnesses onboarded. Thank you very much. Suspend. Meeting. Thank you. I'd like to welcome the witnesses joining for the second hour. From Biocan RX, Stephanie Michaud, President and Chief Executive Officer, welcome. From Canadian Association for Pharmacy Distribution Management, Angelique Berg and Simone Czar, Senior Vice President. And then we have the Neighbourhood Pharmacy Association of Canada, Sandra Hanna, Chief Executive Officer. So we have a really hybrid meeting today. And I just wanted to begin by just welcoming you as witnesses, but also I wanted to give you a little bit of housekeeping here. There are two of you representing one group, You only have 5 minutes. So you can split it, or you can decide who is going to do the presentation. Everyone has 5 minutes to present, or every group, and I will give you a 1 minute shout out and a 30-second shout out so you can wrap up. If you didn't think you got to say everything you wanted to say, there's going to be a question and answer session in which you're going to be able to expand, and I'm sure the members listening here will feed you questions so you can expand on what you're trying to tell us. So we now begin with Stephanie Michaud. Hi, Stephanie, welcome. Ms. Michaud, for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you. Madame la Présidente, membres.
Madam Chair, committee members, I'm honored to appear before you today. I'm speaking in French to underscore what lies at the heart of my approach. Pharmaceutical sovereignty is a country's capacity to tell its own scientific story and to write its next chapters. I'll continue in English.
CEO of BioCanRx, Canada's immunotherapy network, a federally funded organization that has spent the past decade doing something Canada does not do nearly enough, taking world-class Canadian cancer research and turning it into actual therapies for actual patients. I want to use my 5 minutes to challenge one assumption embedded in how the study is framed, and I say this with respect because I believe it matters enormously for the recommendations this committee will make. Pharmaceutical sovereignty is most often discussed as a supply chain problem. How do we ensure Canadians can access medicines when global supply is disrupted? That framing accepts as a starting condition that Canada will continue to depend on therapies created elsewhere. The deeper question, the one this committee has an opportunity to address, is why isn't Canada creating more of those therapies itself? Between 2002 and March 2026, only 3.4% of cancer immunotherapy clinical trials conducted in Canada were based on made-in-Canada innovations. Canada is the only G7 country without a domestic pharmaceutical company producing novel medicines, not because our science is weak, it is world-class, but because we have built a federal funding and governance system that is very good at funding the first chapter of a discovery and then stops. In December 2025, BioCanRx commissioned the Institute on Governance to benchmark Canada's translational ecosystem against 6 peer countries. The finding was unambiguous. Canada's underperformance is not a science gap, it's a governance gap. Advanced therapies, the cell and gene therapies that represent the next generation of cancer treatment, and increasingly treatment for metabolic and other diseases, fall structurally between federal mandates. The work required to move a Canadian discovery to a clinical trial, the GMP biomanufacturing, the toxicology studies, the regulatory dossier, this work is too applied for federal health research funding and too risky for private capital. It falls into a gap and nothing catches it. We live this problem directly. In 2023 and 2024 federal clinical trial competitions, 3 BioCanRx projects were selected for funding and could not proceed. They could not file a clinical trial application to Health Canada because the regulatory preparation work had never been funded. These projects sat idle for more than a year, and there was no federal mechanism designed to bridge the gap. We stepped in as an organization due to our funding in the Strategic Science Fund. One of those projects has now opened a clinical trial offering a CAR-T therapy to both pediatric and adult blood cancer patients, a therapy that does not exist and has not existed in Canada before. About 2 weeks ago, the Government of Canada announced a $280 million commitment to support Aspect Biosystems, a Vancouver company developing bioengineered cellular medicines targeting diseases, including type 1 diabetes. That is exactly the model Canada should be building: Canadian science, Canadian manufacturing, integrated with global expertise. But it is remarkable precisely because it is rare. BioCanRx is asking this committee for 3 things. First, redefine the scope of the study. Pharmaceutical sovereignty must mean the capacity to create novel therapies, not only to secure supply of existing ones. Second, fill the structural gap. Canada needs a permanent, milestone-driven translational health research program that funds the work currently falling between mandates, including the regulatory preparation that federal clinical trial funding currently leaves unfunded. CIHR should not fund a trial that cannot proceed. The IOG has made this recommendation, and we are here to reinforce it. Third, publish a strategy with real accountability, a framework with milestones aligned across Health Canada, ICED, federal research bodies, and a coordination mechanism so Canadian innovators are not navigating this alone. The committee's task is to make success the system, not the exception. Canada discovered insulin. Researchers trained at the University of Alberta pioneered the science behind CAR T-cell therapy. Canadian science is not the problem. The problem is that we continue to invest heavily in the first chapter and leave the rest unfunded. The result is that Canadians with cancer are accessing therapies created from Canadian science in other countries' clinical trials, manufactured in other countries' facilities. That is not sovereignty. I'm asking this committee to help us build this. Thank you, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you very much. Well within the 5 minutes. Thank you very much. I now go to the Canadian Association for Pharmaceutical Distribution. Is it Ms. Berg who is going to be the speaker? For 5 minutes, please, Ms. Berg.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the members of the committee for the opportunity to appear today. My name is Angelique Berg, and my colleague Simona Czar and I appear on behalf of the Canadian Association for Pharmacy Distribution Management. We represent Canada's pharmaceutical distributors who deliver the great majority of medicines across the country to community pharmacies, to hospitals, and other points of care. And with their trading partners, they represent the supply chain, actors in the supply chain who actually touch the product. The theoretical hits the road in this supply chain. We believe that the National Pharmaceutical Sovereignty Strategy, requires solid understanding of that supply chain, domestically and globally, to anticipate the impact of decisions on Canadians' access to medications. We are so pleased to be at your service, and we commend this initiative. For those unfamiliar, pharmaceutical distributors play a critical role in medicine supply. They streamline orders and deliveries between hundreds of manufacturers and over 12,000 points of dispensing. They manage thousands of products from the most shelf-stable to the most sensitive across therapeutic categories. They hold buffer inventory to absorb shocks, and they resolve most disruptions and shortages, if you can imagine, before the patients feel them. They operate in a stringently regulated environment, and they serve Canadians in every province and territory, from downtown centres to remote communities, across all kinds of geography and any weather. Distributors connect policy to delivery. Distributors ensure access, physical access, to medications. From their position in the middle of the domestic supply chain, theirs is a national system-wide vantage point, up and down the supply chain in Canada, that affords a view of pressures and opportunities that can help to inform the pharmaceutical sovereignty strategy. Based on that experience and that viewpoint, we offer 3 recommendations for the committee's consideration. First, the strategy can view the domestic supply chain as a vital enabling system, and it is. Policy decisions on pricing, procurement, and manufacturing can be strengthened by including consideration of the cost of physical access to medicines. And this is especially important for remote and rural communities. I'll give you an illustration. The average distribution funding for a bottle of a cardiovascular protective agent, let's say atorvastatin, is less than the price of a postage stamp. That's regardless if it is delivered to downtown Ottawa or to Moosonee. There is also great opportunity for public-private collaboration. This could include partnerships on reimagined vaccine distribution and strategic stockpiling initiatives, leveraging not just the formidable existing infrastructure, but the supply chain's vast expertise. Second, domestic manufacturing incentives can focus on reducing cost, risk, and time to market, with a close eye on the Buy Canadian initiative to guard against worsening shortages before things get better. Strategic incentives behind the scenes that enable all of the pharmaceutical supply chain, such as regulatory and licensing streamlining, faster Health Canada approvals, and quicker public drug plan approvals, can improve resilience without losing alternative suppliers that are critical in our transition. Third, because Canada imports roughly 70% of its medicines and new manufacturing facilities can take years to build, we do need a starting point that preserves patient access, like has been said by other witnesses. Canada can focus domestic manufacturing on a targeted short list of imported critical medicines, those where interruptions pose serious risk to patient health and where shortages are already common. There are existing credible resources that offer a good start, including Health Canada's own critical and vulnerable drugs list. In closing, we see an immense opportunity here for Canada. The pharmaceutical supply chain is a strong, critical part of the enabling supporting systems to this strategy, and there's a strong foundation in place. We are committed to working collaboratively with government and partners across the system to build on it. Thank you for the opportunity to share our perspective.
Thank you very much, Ms. Berg. I now go to the Neighbourhood Foundation of Canada, Ms. Hannah, Chief Executive Officer. You have 5 minutes, please, Ms. Hannah.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the honorable members of the committee for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Sandra Hanna. I'm the CEO of the Neighbourhood Pharmacy Association of Canada. I'm also a third-generation practicing pharmacist and a former independent pharmacy owner, where I worked directly with patients and Canadians to manage medication access and continuity of care. Neighbourhood pharmacies represents the delivery of care through more than 12,000 pharmacies across Canada, including independent, chain, and specialty pharmacies, as well as those in grocery and mass merchandisers. 95% of Canadians live within 5 kilometers of a pharmacy. They are Canadians' most frequent and often first and last point of contact with the healthcare system. We describe pharmaceutical sovereignty as ensuring a stable and secure supply of medicines for Canada, and that is critical. But from a pharmacy standpoint, sovereignty has to also include and be measured by whether that supply actually reaches patients, because only then do we actually achieve true access. Access cannot be defined by manufacturing, procurement, or funding and coverage alone. It depends on the infrastructure that reliably delivers those medicines to patients. That infrastructure is the pharmacy sector, where patients find out whether their medications are available, delayed, substituted, or rationed, and where upstream disruptions become real and can cause harm. In a globally integrated and increasingly unstable environment, pharmaceutical supply is a matter of national security, and those pressures are felt most directly at the point of care. Pharmacies are a stabilizing layer of the system when those disruptions occur. Pharmacies manage shortages in real time, work with prescribers to adjust therapies, source alternatives, manage inventory to protect the most vulnerable patients, and support adherence when disruptions inevitably do occur. In many cases, patients remain on therapy not because the system is completely stable, but because pharmacies are actively stabilizing it alongside distributors. Yet this role is not fully reflected in how pharmaceutical policy is designed. We often treat Canada's pharmaceutical supply as though it was centrally managed. In reality, it is fragmented and it's price-driven. Medicines flow through manufacturers, wholesalers, group purchasing organizations, and pharmacies, with public and private payers shaping demand. At the same time, global pressures are increasing fragility, manufacturing is centralized in fewer regions, active pharmaceutical ingredient production relies on a limited number of suppliers, and geopolitical uncertainty is growing. Pharmacies sit at the end of this chain. We don't directly control supply, but we are accountable for ensuring every Canadian receives the medications they need. We use real-time data, understand local demand, and continuously adjust inventory to maintain access. We are often the first to see signs of strain, including demand spikes, sourcing challenges, and early ripple effects from global disruptions. This is a critical and often invisible part of the system, working at its best. Yet these insights are not systematically used in national policy, planning, or response. Pharmacies must be a part of the design of an integrated systems level solution that leverages real-time insights across the full supply chain. These are not individual business tools, but rather coordinated system infrastructure. If pharmaceutical sovereignty is about resilience, pharmacy-level insights must be part of the core system infrastructure. The last mile matters. Pharmacies are also a core part of Canada's life sciences ecosystem. We operationalize new therapies, support appropriate use, and contribute to post-market monitoring by identifying early issues with new medicines. Despite this, pharmacies are rarely included in pharmaceutical policy or strategy discussions. If Canada is serious about pharmaceutical sovereignty, a whole system approach must include the delivery layer where access is actually realized. So in closing, a few considerations for the committee. In addition to reinforcing domestic manufacturing and redundancies for critical medicines, as others have noted, we encourage you to think a bit broader. First, recognize pharmacies as a critical healthcare infrastructure and include us early and often in pharmaceutical policy, pricing, and strategy discussions. Second, improve supply chain visibility, including at the pharmacy level, to build a more integrated and responsive system. And third and last, enable flexibility for pharmacists to manage shortages through therapeutic substitution across all medicines, supported by federal recognition of pharmacists as practitioners. Pharmaceutical sovereignty and increasingly national security is about ensuring Canadians have uninterrupted access to the medicines they need, and pharmacies are on the front line of that responsibility. We look forward to supporting this work with real-time insights from the front lines and contributing to a system that is reliable, sustainable, and responsive to the needs of Canadians. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hannah. And now we're going to go to the question and answer session. It starts with 6 minutes, and this 6 minutes includes question and answer. So I begin with Mr. Strauss for the Conservatives for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Would you kindly let me know when I have 1 minute left on your clock?
I will let you know when you have 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Thank you. Ms. Hannah, thank you for that introduction to your organization and the importance of pharmacies as the last mile of pharmaceutical sovereignty, as you described. Our committee has taken an interest in this e-prescription program that the federal government funded to the tune of $300 million so far, called Prescribe IT. Were members of your organization or you yourself using that program, and was it working successfully?
Yep, many of our members were using the program and were signed on to the program. I personally was also using the program. It was an important tool. Yes.
So would you say it was contributing to Canada's pharmaceutical sovereignty in that sense?
I think it was contributing. Certainly, it was the right idea.
Yeah, thank you.
I think it was certainly the right direction.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we didn't see the uptake that we would have hoped to see with this type of program.
Were you paying to use the program?
Yes, towards the end we were. It was originally funded federally, and towards the end, when federal funding was ceased, funding was moved on to pharmacies with the new model for Prescribe It.
Do you know to whom those funds were flowing?
I can't say for sure. Pharmacies were invoiced by Prescribe It for a per transaction fee.
And do you know how much that transaction fee was?
It was 20 cents per transaction.
And was this sustainable in your view or in the view of your members?
I think the unfortunate thing was that we view Prescribe It as something that was critical foundational system infrastructure and not an operational tool for pharmacies. E-prescribing is a critical tool, I think, that delivers value in terms of safety, efficiency, visibility across the system. This is health system infrastructure, and I think pharmacies were disappointed at the decision to be the only funders of a system that benefited so many different stakeholders: government, patients, other health system, other healthcare providers. And so I think there were opportunities to rethink that model, certainly for more value.
Thank you. Some department officials from Health Canada explained that they made a decision at some point to kill the program, but they haven't. They set some time period because they wanted to give physicians and pharmacists time to pivot to whatever it is that's coming next. Do you know what's coming next? Because I understand that the program's wrapping up like in 6 weeks.
Yeah, we understand that there will be standards that are published, but we haven't been privy to any specifics in terms of what is next.
Do you imagine that you'll be able to adopt those standards for e-prescribing 6 weeks from now, not knowing what they are?
I can't really comment. I'm not a technical expert, but to my knowledge, there aren't any currently available tools that could immediately sweep in and, according to those standards, to be a tool that can be leveraged easily and efficiently or in a streamlined way by healthcare providers in the system today.
We spoke with a family physician in St. Thomas, Ontario. His name's Dr. Boltson. He's been quoted in the CBC about this as well. He and his practice partners, as well as other family physician friends of mine, have been using Prescribe IT, are expressing frustration. They feel like the rug has been pulled out from under them. Does that expression of the rug being pulled out from under you, does that resonate with you? Is that something you or your members might say about this?
I think what I can say is that there was some frustration from the pharmacy sector for some time towards the end when the funding model shifted, frankly, to pharmacies being expected to cover the cost of the full program. The way we view it and what I can say is that we believe that electronic prescribing is not just a nice to have, it's a core health system infrastructure. Today, our healthcare system really relies on faxes, which limit safety, efficiency, and visibility across the system. And as we think about pharmaceutical sovereignty, tools like e-prescribing are not just about convenience. They're foundational to the kind of data visibility and interoperability that we need to manage drug supply and anticipate shortages and respond to disruptions in real time. We don't have that today. And so from our perspective, I think perhaps the tool was treated as an operational tool, and I think there's other opportunity for us to be thinking about tools like this more as system infrastructure.
So when you mentioned faxes and how they're still used so much in healthcare, 10 years ago,
1 minute,
Prescribe IT was brought in under the slogan "Axe the Fax," which sounds familiar, but now we still have faxes. So would you say that "Axe the Fax" turned out to be an empty slogan?
I still have hope.
Okay, very good. I'd like to turn my time over to Mr. Mazier. Oh, you're good? Yeah. Oh, I feel like I finished on the highest note I'm going to hit. So it does seem to me
30 seconds
to wrap up that "Axe the Fax" sounds like an empty rhyming 3-word slogan that the Liberal government used to spend $300 million on a program that was not fit for service because physicians didn't adopt it. And even though pharmacists found it extremely critical and part of Canada's pharmaceutical sovereignty, the government has now put a bullet in the head of the program, pulled the rug out from under the prescribers and the pharmacists who were using it. And I can't believe they're putting another $50 million into Canada Health Infoway.
Is that Axe the Fax or Axe the Tax? Which is that?
This is Axe the Fax.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so Miss Jessup, please.
But you did take it in the end.
Sorry, Miss Sidhu, I'm sorry. It's Mr. Church, you're right. It was Mr. Somebody else. Had to get plain. Miss Sidhu, for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, sorry, 6 minutes.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, all the witnesses. Thanks for your testimony. My first question is to the biomechanics. Ms. McGraw, clinical trials are often the first pathway for patients to access innovative therapies. In your view, how can modernizing Canada's clinical trials framework so a patient can improve the access while also strengthening our domestic life sciences ecosystem?
Question. Being able to execute clinical trials is absolutely critical to providing early access to novel therapies for patients in a variety of different disease areas. What is equally important, however, is to ensure that we support the pathway from the discovery of an exciting new and novel therapy to get it to a clinical trial. Most of the molecules and products that we're looking at are known as biologics. They can be viruses, they can be antibodies, or they can be modified cellular therapies. So building up the regulatory dossier, especially for a first-in-human study, is the key to entry to delivering a clinical trial here in Canada. And this is what my organization is involved in doing, is supporting that bench-to-bedside translation to really increase the number of clinical trials in Canada and to increase access of those clinical trials to as many cancer patients in Canada as possible. So ensuring that we have that bench-to-bedside translational support involving coordination of biomanufacturing, but really enabling our companies, our innovators to build up the regulatory dossier so that they're able to go knock on the door of Health Canada with a clinical trial application is the critical first step that is a necessary condition to be able to execute a clinical trial in this country.
Thank you. From a pharmaceutical sovereignty perspective, what steps are needed to ensure that publicly funded research lead to both improved patient outcomes and long-term economic benefit in Canada?
I would underscore the importance of being able to support translational research. Some of the statistics that I've cited in my opening remarks are quite stark. from 2002 to March of 2026, we carried out a retrospective analysis over that time period using a publicly available database inquiring how many cancer immunotherapy trials had taken place in Canada, and the numbers were well over 1,000, which situates us well because we're able to attract quite a few pharmaceutical company trials here in the country. When we further analyze that data set and ask the question, how many of these are based on Canadian innovation, the numbers are quite stark, and it's a number of 3.4%, or approximately 50 over a 24-year period, which is a very poor performance. BioCanRx, we've been in existence since 2015. We're responsible for half of those clinical trials, including very sophisticated advanced therapeutics such as CAR-Ts and tumor-infiltrating lymphocytes that we're currently delivering across the country.
Thank you. But my last question is to follow up on that. After clinical trials, the manufacturers, how can BioCanRx give some advice so we can be self-sufficient in our country for that domestically manufactured?
Much for the question. One of the initiatives that we have focused on at BioCanRx is to examine what a hospital-based manufacturing could look like. So point-of-care manufacturing, where the manufacturing of the different products are being made in a closed system that is entirely GMP on the inside. This will require regulatory innovation from our regulators, and this is something that we're actively engaging with them on. This is not at all about lowering the bar of safety and quality of the products that we're making, but looking at different and alternative ways of making these products. Being able to manufacture here in Canada increases, if I can call it, the stickiness of these types of products. We work with a lot of companies, large and small companies, but specifically speaking about the smaller companies that are Canadian companies, being able to manufacture here, access the expertise of our clinicians is critical to enhancing the capability of these companies to stay here and to continue to develop their products in Canada and hopefully be able to secure supply in a pharmaceutical sovereignty strategy.
So
1 minute and 16 seconds.
What are the main barriers to stay those companies, even though small companies or big companies? Is there any difference?
So it's really a large part is investment. It is also understanding that we need to have the right business conditions in order to support our companies. It means having the different types of regulatory support as well. One of the recommendations that we've made in the study that we've commissioned at the end of December, which really looks at the governance between and the gap of translation that exists in Canada, there really is a need for our innovators, our companies, to be able to more readily access Health Canada, for example. And so one of the recommendations is a concierge service where there is assistance provided to those innovators to provide them with guidance on how to navigate the regulatory ecosystem at Health Canada, but then also with the CDA, ultimately to ensure that their products are sold here.
Thank you very much. 18 seconds, Ms. Sidhu. You have a wrap-up word? No? Thank you. Okay. Carl, for 6 minutes, please.
Les témoins qui sont avec nous pour la deuxième heure d'étude.
I welcome the witnesses who are here for the second part of this study. You said that immunotherapy relies on an innovation that exists here. So does it show that our shortcomings is not in innovation, but in transitioning beyond that? Well, when we sponsor production and we are able to submit clinical trials, research for clinical trials in Health Canada, it's essential and we need funding for that. And it's a type of funding that is not very well managed right now. And that is why BioCanRx was created in 2015 to be able to cross what is known as the Valley of Death, which is from the point of discovery to the clinical trials. So moving from phase 1 to phase 2. Microphone. So your company wasted about 2 years to get an answer, and now you are seeing a confirmed reduction in funding. So what is the concrete impact of this instability or this suspension of funding? What impact did it have in your capacity to plan clinical trials and to retain teams? Answer. Well, the impact was not yet negotiated. We haven't yet received the agreement. We have received a letter from the government indicating that funding has been reduced by 860,000, and that is a major amount for us. Currently, vis-a-vis my team, we are the same. We have the same number of people, so we will not hire any new person. And of course, we're going to start a new competition. And what we're looking to there is that for projects that will get into a therapeutics pipeline, and we're developing many and different types of them, we will have to maybe compress one of the programs that we have to be able to introduce a new product in our pipeline, and the goal is to achieve a clinical trial. So it's going to have an impact on the support that we can provide to our scientific community, with the doctors that we're working with, and in the end, it could affect the patients who would, in the future, hopefully receive these different products. That's understood. You're talking about a transnational underfinanced capacity, and you talked about the valley of death. So is Canada losing its IP and a financial and economic windfall because of this? Well, a very short answer to this is yes. It has a major impact on all of this. When we look at investments avenues, when we look at the major companies, we see that investments happen after phase 1 clinical trials. Now, if we are only stopping at publication and we're unable to develop further to be able to knock on the door of Health Canada, then it's clear that we will not be able to have clinical trials. And we observed that when we were waiting for funds from the Strategic Scientific Fund, we no longer had money. And so we asked our projects to go and seek other sources of funding, and we saw considerable success for those 3 projects. And we were not surprised because they were excellent projects, properly developed. But what happens is that these projects received funding for clinical trials, but were unable to apply for clinical trials with Health Canada because there wasn't enough money to complete the studies necessary to meet the requirements of Health Canada. So what happens is that that money remains frozen in the system, and so a clinical trial cannot be started. And these are patients who will not receive treatment. One example, one of these 3 projects is currently in clinical trials, and we are treating children and adults. These are very sick patients who have received several types of treatments, and this is their last chance treatment, actually. So when we're talking about trans-relational treatment, we're talking, especially with cancer, we're talking about patients, we're talking about people's lives. Well, we know that Biocan IRX, with $1, you generate about $3.10. So do you think it's a strategic investment or just funding? I think it's investment. Now, in Canada is funding discovery, but it's not funding clinical trials onto Canada. Is that the situation that is happening? Yeah, I think we have shown in Biocan RX that what we can do if we can coordinate bioproduction support, which is absolutely required to provide applications for clinical trials to Health Canada, we would see an increase in the number of clinical trials and advanced therapies. These are new therapies that do not exist yet, and it's new in Canada, and our patients, our cancer patients, first of all, need these therapies, and secondly, are investors in research in Canada, and thirdly, they deserve it. And so what is the major investment that the government of Canada should do right now? Well, it's a funding approach that is coordinated. We would require that the correlation happens between Health Canada and the companies. And we see, for example, with the cuts that we have seen, that
Madame la Présidente, c'est possible juste de demander des
Madam
réponses?
Chair, I would just like to request a response in writing, just to complete her answer, please.
Please send your response in writing to the clerk, and she will distribute it to everyone else. So now we move to the second round. It's a 5-minute round. For 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to the witnesses for coming here today. I guess I'm going to follow up on Dr. Strauss's comments around prescribed IT. It's quite frustrating, actually. I don't know if the witnesses are aware that we discussed that program here last Tuesday. We had actually the CEO from Canada's Health Infoway in here, and he went about not answering any one of our questions. I think even the chair got into it, is trying to get information out of what actually was spent and where did the money go. And it was actually, if I was I am a Canadian taxpayer, and I think everybody was quite shocked of just how hesitant they were to actually reveal just where the $300 million went. And this is $300 million for a program that went to a volunteer organization. It was basically just to axe the facts and try to get some streamlining going. They had 9 years to figure it out. And then they turned around at the very end of it, Health Canada and Canada Infoway, and decided that they were going to start charging pharmacies. Because the money was up. Of course, the government, I guess Health Canada had enough. So they turned around and started charging you guys, which is absolutely insane. $300 million has gone away, and it is a program that didn't work. So, for that reason, I would like to move to resume debate on my motion that for the production of documents on prescribed IT.
Thank you. We now have a motion on the floor that was distributed at the last meeting. And so I will open debate on this. I will not ask the witnesses to leave just yet, because I don't know whether this is going to be a quick and dirty or not. Ms. Chi, excuse me a second.
To resume debate, is there a UC or you want to vote to resume debate?
No, he's brought in a thing. The motion's on the floor. Okay. We resume debate. Yes, go ahead. Ms. Chi?
I did.
So it means that we're going to debate this motion. So I'm entertaining a list here.
Oh, can we just pause, suspend for a quick moment?
Would you like us to suspend?
Yeah.
I suspend. Of the committee The rules suggest that if a motion to resume debate on a motion that's already been tabled, there is no debate on whether that motion should be accepted or not. It automatically begins to be debated.
It goes to a vote.
Point of order.
Yes, Mr. Major.
I think the clerk is trying to explain.
Mr. Major, I just read it in the regulations. Thank you. Ms. Chi? Oh, Ms. Chi, you okay, Mr. Fajikatos?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Obviously, I'm not a full member of this committee. I'm substituting in today, so I'll ask for colleagues' indulgence. I understand that Mr. Mazier has put forward a motion to resume debate on a motion that was already being discussed. And what's that regarding? This is...
I think everyone has the motion. If I may read it again, I will read it as a chair for the record. Thank you. Can I read it?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Thank you. The debate, the motion reads, sorry, that the committee order the production of the following documents unredacted for the period from 2016 to the present. There is a section A, contribution agreements with Canada Health Infoway relating to Prescribe It. B, a record of the intellectual property developed under Prescribe It, including the entity that holds the rights and the general terms of use, licensing, or transfer. C, annual adoption data broken down by province. D, the total revenue generated from the 20-cent per prescription fee. E, viability analyses and program evaluations. F, documents that led to the decision to terminate the program, including recommendations and analyses provided to Health Canada and to the Minister where applicable. G, a list of the principal vendors involved in the program, including amounts paid to each. H, documents and analyses related to the cost of terminating the program, including contractual obligations, penalties, and transition costs. That these documents be provided by Health Canada and Canada Health Infoway in accordance with their respective responsibilities and deposited with the clerk of the committee within 1 week of the adoption of this motion. That any redactions be limited to commercially confidential information and that a summary of redacted content and the reasons for each redaction be provided. Now, this is what we're debating.
Madam Chair, if there's no unanimous consent to resume, that we would go to a vote to decide that. Not on the main motion, but this would be, as I understand it, Mr. Mazier asking the committee to resume debate. So, in other words, if there's no unanimous consent, and I don't believe there is, we would be voting on whether or not to resume debate. Okay, so.
Regarding reintroduction of a debate that has already been put before committee. The motion to resume consideration of a motion is a non-debatable motion, so we cannot discuss whether we are going to resume it or not. It is now automatically resumed. It has the same effect as a motion to proceed to another order of business. For example, the Standing Committee on Health, evidence May the 2nd, meeting number 65. So, we're not discussing whether the motion should be tabled. We're now discussing the actual motion.
Have clarification, Chair? Yeah. So there's no, you read that there's no vote?
No, once it's already been tabled and it came off the order paper because of the fact that we adjourned the meeting, it's now being resumed. It is automatically does not need to be debated. The motion itself is on the floor. I just read it. I don't know, do you want me to read it again, guys? Seriously. It's just a simple sentence. Do I need to read it again? I will. Pardon? motion or not. That's what that rule said. We're just going to debate the motion. If you don't want to debate the motion, we can just vote on the motion as tabled. Okay?
If I could, Madam, thank you. So you're opening up, Madam Chair, a debate on the motion to resume.
Point of order.
Debating the motion.
There is no debate on the motion to resume debate. It's non-debatable, as I just read. You are now debating the actual motion.
Okay. Well,
So, or amending it or doing what you want to do with it.
we're not giving unanimous consent to debate. And so I would suggest that we go to a vote on Mr. Mazier's motion to resume debate.
You want to vote without debating this because it's a non-debatable motion that he made to resume debate on a motion already tabled, and that's non-debatable. Whether to resume debate is non-debatable. Shall I read the rule again so the committee understands it?
No, our
Okay,
hands are
so,
up. Our hands
all
are
right.
up.
Okay, then we're debating the motion that's on the table. So do I have...
point of order,
Ms.
Chair?
Shi, yes?
Point of order. You mentioned that it's not debatable.
Yes.
What does the Green Book say? I'm just curious about all dilatory motions. Does dilatory motions, do they require a vote?
This is not a dilatory motion. This is just a motion, and I read it. I'll read it again, guys, please. Can I read it again? Can I read the rule again? It's pretty clear. It is not debatable if a motion that was already tabled by to the committee is asked to resume. It is not debatable whether to resume it or not. It is automatically accepted. So we're debating the actual motion. I'm sorry.
What it means is we go directly to a vote.
Exactly. So whether you accept, we don't debate it. You just say, I don't accept this motion coming on the table. We get a vote. If it said, yes, I don't accept wins, then the motion is gone. If you say, I accept, the motion stays. Is that easy? You don't debate it. You just say, I don't accept this motion to be put back on the table. But it's not debatable the reasons why you don't accept it. You can just go to the vote and say, in other words, I'm just asking if everybody agrees with this motion, seeking unanimous consent. If it's not there, do you want to go to a vote on the motion being tabled again?
So is the motion to resume debate? Is the motion to resume debate?
So do you agree to the motion coming? You don't debate it. Do you agree to the motion being placed again on the order paper? Do you agree to that or not? So there's a vote. If you wish, we can vote on that. You don't. So let's call a vote. All right? I do not have unanimous
Just to clarify, I think there's some
to have this motion resumed.
Point of order, Chair. I think there's some confusions. Like, we are voting on the resumption of the debate, right? We're not voting on the motion. Because there are some suggestions on the other side that we're voting on the motion. I just want to clarify that.
Because basically, if you do not agree to the motion being placed, it's just that it is not debatable whether the motion is back or not. You just go, I don't agree. You don't have to debate the reasons why. That's what is meant by debatable or non-debatable. The motion is saying you don't want it, you can say so. And that's simply what I'm asking. I don't have unanimous consent to place this motion back on the order paper. So I'm going to say, because I do not have unanimous consent, do you wish to have a recorded vote, or you just wanted to say the motion is passed or non-passed? Let's go.
So the vote is to resume debate.
The motion is to resume the debate on the motion, yeah.
Okay. So the vote is to resume debate on the motion. Ms. Chi?
No.
Mr. Fragiscatos?
No.
Ms. Jaczek?
No.
Ms. Sidhu?
No.
Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Ms. Conans,
Yes.
Mr. Mazier,
Yes.
Mr. Strauss,
Yes.
Monsieur Blanchet-Jonca,
Oui.
The vote is yes.
I've got my hand up first.
What are we putting your hand up for? Is it a point of order, Ms. G?
Point of order. My hand was
Yes,
up
okay,
first.
all right.
Yeah.
Speak your
My
point
hand.
of order, but we have to read out the results of the vote.
Yeah, because I put my
First.
hand up a long time ago. Yeah. No.
I didn't see your hand. Look, guys, let's stop doing this. We're not in school here. I have a list of people. I am about to read the results of a vote that was just taken by this committee. The vote is, and I will do that, then I will entertain discussion. You cannot change a vote that has already been done. So what is the point of order? The order right now in the committee is to read out the vote that was taken. That is the order of the day. I will read out the vote. Thank you. It is yes 5, no 4. The motion to resume debate is carried. Now, Ms. Chi, Ms. Conans, Ms. Sidhu, we have a list. Thank you. List. Ms. Chi.
Thank you. Thank you to all the witnesses. Unfortunately, I did have a couple of questions on to BioCanX RX. Unfortunately, that couldn't be answered given the disruption.
Point of order, Chair.
The motion that's placed on the table. Again, it was. I thought it was dealt with the last time. That's why we resumed pharmaceutical sovereignty study.
Order, please. A member is speaking, A. B, the member should finish what she's saying. She's raising a point of order. I cannot determine whether it's a valid point of order or not until I finish hearing what she has to say. Continue, Ms. Chi.
Yeah. And it's very unfortunate because it's a Liberal study that we placed on the agenda for, well, in September. And due to various reasons, we weren't able to get through any of our study. And we've been very collaborative, giving Conservative the first study, Bloc the second study, and it's been almost a year that we just reached the Liberal study. This is only our third meeting, and when we started the study, it's been interrupted by various topics, and albeit, whatever is being brought up, I think there should be a level of respect to complete the Liberal study before we delve into the other topics. And I feel, we've given that level of respect to the Conservatives, to the Bloc, and we finished the study. We added meetings to the Conservative study. We've been very collaborative. So it's actually very disappointing, and it's very... I feel bad because we have witnesses called today online in person.
Point of order.
And we wouldn't be able to proceed.
It's not up to you to decide whether it's a point of order or not. The chair makes that decision. I cannot until I listen to what Ms. Chi has to say. Can we be respectful of each other's place on the roster? I have your name down to speak later on. Ms. Chi, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And I really just want to express how frustrating we're trying to complete the pharmaceutical sovereignty study is. And, I feel bad for the witnesses. And this is not the first time this happened. And even now I'm being interrupted as a member. And it's just something I really want to raise because this is a pattern I've noticed at our committee. Are us unable to get through our liberal study for whatever intent and purpose from the other side. So I really just implore members, it would be great if we can complete our liberal study. We've given everybody here around the table the respect your studies have received, and I only ask the same given to our study as well. And I believe this is a very important study. We've heard from witnesses the shortages. Will we see?
Chair, I have a point of order. I don't think this...
Ms. Conan,
they're not respecting you.
A member has the floor. She's speaking. It is a point of order.
They're taking advantage of your time.
Can I finish what I'm saying, please? the point of this meeting was called to discuss pharmaceutical sovereignty. We have witnesses who came to do that. We have now moved off that order of the day onto this motion. So she's speaking on the order of the day. She's saying that it's a pity that we've moved off the orders of this meeting into something else. And she's allowed to do that, and she has not finished speaking, and I would ask you to please allow her to finish speaking. Thank you.
I think the chair can be judge of that. Thank you, Chair. So we've heard, even during our short 3 meetings that were dedicated to this study, the challenges and some of the opportunities within this topic, right? What we've seen during COVID, all the shortages that was brought upon our nation, the resilience of our nation, how people came together, not without challenges, but we came together. Do we still want to be in the same situation again? I really prefer not to. And I'm pretty sure everybody around this table, all the members in this committee, would like to see us move forward with a lot more resilience, with a lot more, supplies of things in the space, so that our front lines are not overwhelmed like what we've seen in COVID. We were caught off guard, but now we've seen lessons learned, which is the genesis of this motion, this study. And I'm kind of gobsmacked every time we try to talk about this issue. It gets sidetracked, it gets derailed, and which really makes me question the intent of.
Chair, what standing order is she referring to?
She's not speaking to a standing order, Mr. Major. She's speaking to the fact that we have now ended the order of the day, which was mean that we had witnesses to come and speak on pharmaceutical sovereignty, and she's speaking to the fact that she would have liked to see this order continue, that the order of the day, you all received the motion, it was meant to discuss pharmaceutical, the notice of the order of the day was to discuss pharmaceutical sovereignty.
She is debating, or has she got a point of order?
That is a valid point of order she's making.
So what standing order is she referring to?
I don't know what you mean by a standing order. The committees meet and they have a business order of what they're going to meet for that day. You get that from the clerk every time. You receive that this time. It was to discuss pharmaceutical sovereignty. We therefore invited people to give up their time to come and discuss that. We have now removed that off the table. The vote was to remove it off the table, but she is speaking to the fact that the order of today's business has now been violated, and she is therefore saying why this is so.
So is it a point of order or is it debate?
It is the point of order for the order of the day, which is pharmaceutical sovereignty.
In your judgment, I challenge the chair on that. It is not a point of order.
Mr. Major, it is. That's the order. Do you understand what the order of the day is? Did you get the notice?
I'm challenging the chair on that decision. That is not a point of order.
Mr. Major, I will not even ask for a vote on this because I know that whatever the rules set by the Parliament for committees in which they would behave. I read them out to you. I'm trying to be as transparent as I can. But because you have the numbers, you can actually vote down a standing order and the rules set by Parliament just because you have the numbers. I don't believe that is in any way democratic. I think we are allowing people to speak. Not allowing people to speak is something that I believe this is fine. But you want to challenge the chair, go ahead. I know that you will win the vote because there are more of you. It's not about order. It's not about rules. It's not about procedure. It's just about having numbers to challenge a chair on something that is actually not procedurally correct. Now, go ahead. She's challenging the chair. Is there unanimous consent?
Sorry, Chair. Just before we proceed, out of the respect for the time of the witnesses, can we please dismiss the witnesses?
I will dismiss the witnesses, and I would like to apologize to the witnesses for having given up their time, prepared their submissions, coming here to answer questions, and having to be derailed. So I apologize to you, but you may leave because this meeting can only go to a certain time based on resources. You were asked to come for 2 hours, and so I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Thank you for your time.
Just for the record, witnesses, I tried to do that 15 minutes ago.
Please, I don't know what you're saying for the record. You did not have the floor. You did not say anything to me about letting the witnesses go because you did not have the floor, Mr. Major. Somebody else had the floor. You can say what you want and mutter it in the corner. Respect is if somebody is speaking, you allow them to finish when they have the floor. That's called mutual respect. In the House, when somebody is speaking, you can yell and scream. The Speaker will say to you, I'm sorry, so-and-so has the floor. That is not a point of order. And so you cannot tell me what you are thinking. I am unable, I'm working on it to read minds. I'm learning how to read minds without anybody speaking. But at the moment, Ms. Chi has the floor. She's speaking.
Chair,
Let me
this is his
finish my
violation
sentence.
of his
Ms.
rights as a
Chi
member.
Ms. Chi has the floor. I said she had it. I accepted her point of order as being valid. You have challenged the chair, and I'm saying to you, we will call the vote, but I'm arguing you that I don't know that this is really democratic to violate rules set for standing committee by the Parliament. It's not set by the committee, it's set by Parliament. There's standing orders that are sitting there, and when the chair is challenged, you can always challenge the chair when you know you have numbers. It has nothing to do with the principle or the procedure. So, you've challenged the chair. I will call the vote. We have a vote. Mr. Blanchette-Jonca, what's your point of
Juste
order?
une clarification, Madame la Présidente, parce que vous parlez des choses
Just a clarification, Madam Chair, because you're talking about democratic issues. A government that has had a majority with MPs that have crossed the floor, do you think that that is democratic?
Mr. Blanca, I'm sorry.
Donc, vous répondez.
Agenda for business today. Does anyone in this room understand what a point
of order, Chair.
is?
Point of order.
It is to resume the order of the
point of
day.
order, Chair.
Yes, Ms. Chair.
Point of order,
Ms.
Chair.
Chi.
I think we've had a lot of patience from the Liberal side. First, our study was derailed, and second, I really found the question that was asked really inappropriate to you. And I do not think that was a fair question to you, Chair. We're the Standing Committee of Health. Asking you a question like that is disrespectful. It's out of scope of the committee, and it's out of scope of respecting all the members around this table.
Thank you, Ms. Chi. I said that to Mr. Jonca. I do not accept his point of order.
I just wanted to
Thank
share.
you. I know.
This is
Thank you.
how on this side
Thank
we're
you.
feeling as well.
Thank you. So now, have you finished speaking to your point of order, Ms. Chi?
I have not. I was disrupted.
I know.
I was interrupted.
Challenge the chair.
Continue.
We have a vote.
Oh, we have a vote. I'm sorry. They've challenged the chair. So let's have a vote on. Ms. Chi, continue.
Right, can I continue? Oh, okay. Yeah. So.
We're voting. I'm sorry, Ms. Chi. I call the vote. We will vote on whether the chair's challenge, chair's decision is sustained or not. Mr. Major called that, so we will vote on whether the chair's ruling is challenged.
Before I vote, I'm so sorry, Chair, that things have happened. Like
It's
comments
okay. Sorry,
that I've
Ms.
shared
Chi,
with
that's
you.
not
Yeah.
a point of
I know.
order. A vote is in order right now. So we will call the vote. Thank you.
Sorry. I'm voting to sustain the chair.
No, we haven't.
Oh.
We haven't started yet.
We haven't started? Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
The question is, shall the decision of the chair be sustained? Ms. Chi.
Shall the decision of the chair be sustained?
I vote to sustain the chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Fragiscatos. Yes. Ms. Jackson. Mr. Henley.
Yes.
Ms. Sidhu.
Yes, I spoke to sustain the chair.
Mr. Bailey.
No.
Ms. Conans?
No.
Mr. Mazier?
No.
In the middle of a vote, is she?
Mr. Strauss? No. Mr. Blanchet-Jonca?
Non.
Overturned.
We have a vote of yes, 4, no, 5.
Yeah.
So the chair's decision is not sustained. We know that this was going to be the vote. I said it, but there we are. Now, we have, so what we're doing, because the chair's decision is not sustained, let me say what is going to happen now. We will actually go back to the motion, and Ms. Chi no longer has the floor because the decision to allow her to speak on a point of order was not agreed on. So Ms. Chi has to stop speaking on that issue. And is that clear for everybody what we're doing here? Thank you. Ms. Chi, your hand is up for some reason. Pardon?
Speaking list. To add to the speaking list, Madam Chair.
For the debate?
For the debate,
All right,
yes.
so we have a speaking list on the debate of the motion. Ms. Chi? Oh, sorry, we have Ms. Conans, Ms. Sidhu, and then Ms. Chi. Ms. Conans. Speaking to the motion, please.
The
Thank you.
motion, speaking to the motion of MP Mazier, who is his motion in which we're ordering, we have an order for papers having to do with the $300 million scandal, prescribed IT scandal, which I will say I'm really surprised that the Liberal members here are not supporting it, because they have supported bringing in representatives from Prescribe IT and from Canada Health and Infoway, which is incredibly supportive. All parties here, representatives, voted unanimously to bring in representatives from those organizations next week, because if you look back at the debate here, they agreed that there was something happening that was not being revealed, and that Canadians were ripped off for $300 million. So I do not understand why they wouldn't want to get the paperwork that is necessary to prove that $300 million was misspent. That's all we're asking for. And I'm sure that the Liberal members here want to see the proof, just like they want to talk with members of those organizations and find out what really happened. So I will say that I'm sure that the next Liberal member who speaks will speak directly to the $300 million ripoff to Canadian taxpayers. Otherwise, they will be called to task. Canadians will want to know why they would be filibustering when we need to find out more about this scandal. So I really look forward to the next Liberal member sitting here who will describe to Canadians tonight, why they do not want Canadians to see the paperwork and MPs who represent them from across the country, the paperwork that will prove that there was wrongdoing here. And I really look forward to hearing why these Liberal members would not want to see proof of this scandal.
You finished, Ms. Conans?
I am
Sorry, the
finished.
next speaker up is Ms. Sidhu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, this is a health committee. We all work together for the betterment for the Canadians. We also have a question. We also have a question to the witnesses. We also want to know how, what happened, and this is not like they cannot blame us. Opposition cannot blame us like that to us. And one thing I want to put a record on it: when my colleague Ms. Chi was speaking, this is unacceptable behavior. We are all want to work for Canadians. This is something very, very unacceptable. The members, came from, so they said, this is happening in your committee. So this is something, we are not hiding anything. opposition can say whatever they want to do. So what I want to say, and it's not like they have a different heart and we have a different heart. We all have a same heart. We want to serve Canadians for the better way. But this is about not the protecting the integrity. We don't want to play games what the opposition's like. This is undirected. The only limited exception raises serious concern. We accept the other motion they did, but when one thing everyone see, the witnesses, what kind of behavior we are playing there. When their opposition's talking, we don't say anything. When my colleague...
We're speaking to the motion on the floor.
But I want to put a record, Madam Chair. So what's happening, like all the time, like they interrupted Ms. Chi, they don't want to listen. This is not acceptable. This is something I really want, I'm really frustrated to see that. And now I just want to say, one thing around unredacted documents with only limited exception raises serious concerns. It's not like we're hiding. We are like seeing that, but it's not the time. And then when they put the motion on, now they didn't give us time. There was witnesses. We are asking the question, and it's not like we don't go on the right way. I just want to discuss part E of the motion.
I cannot hear the room because there is disorder in the room with people speaking quite loudly. May I ask the members that if they wish to discuss something, could they allow the meeting to continue and go outside in the corridor and speak to each other? Because if you're going to speak so loudly, it disrupts the proceeding. I'm sorry, Ms. Sidhu, continue.
So this is another, point I want to put on record, and this is an unacceptable behavior. And what the bloc member did say to you, Madam Chair, that was unacceptable.
We have dealt with that, Ms. Sidhu. We're talking about the motion on the floor presented by these
But the behavior of the opposition is not acceptable. That is what, when I'm speaking, I cannot, no one is listening here.
I know, Ms. Sidhu, but let's debate this motion on the floor right now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now let me talk about the Part E, vulnerability analysis and program evaluation. Madam Chair, these documents are, by their very nature, part of the internal policy process. They include candidate assessments, they include risks, they include recommendation, and those recommendations are meant to inform decision makers in a way that is honest, true, and sometimes is critical, Madam Chair. If public servants believe that every internal analysis could be disclosed in full without appropriate protections, it makes harder to them to fill some thousands of documents. So what we have to, say, we want to present some amendments too. So that is why we need a time. That is what we are saying. We are not saying no, but we need time, and we also want to bring some amendments on that too. So, but it makes it harder for us to this is frankly, if I'm saying that, and untimely, it makes harder for the government to make well-informed decisions too. And Madam Chair, if we come part of F, documents related to decision, this is to terminate the program. This is, this category almost certainly including briefing to the minister, recommendation and decision-making records. And there are long-standing principles respected by government to all stripes, and these types of document, so we have to see what we are requesting, and and the time frame they're saying, I think that's not enough. So again, Madam Chair, this is not about avoiding accountability. This is about respecting the framework and that allow government to respond back to thousands of unredacted documents. We want to work with the opposition. fewer errors of handwritten prescriptions. So because of for patient, this means improved coordination of care. It's a long motion, Madam Chair. Through investment in organization, we have supported the development of tools that improve patient safety, enhance data security, historic investment through health transfer to provinces, support for health workforce retention and recruitment, invest in mental health services. So this is a very long motion, and so when Madam Chair, I have to ask, what is the objective? They cannot blame us on that. We also want to be, transparent. We already have a mechanism to ensure accountability. If the object is to improve healthcare delivery, then we should be focusing on how to strengthen system like Prescribe Aid, not undermining through broad and potentially harmful disclosure requirements. And if the objective is to support patients, then we should be listening to the witnesses in front of us and who can provide insight on how these systems are actually working on the ground. Instead, that mission that demands extremely broad documents production imposes an unrealistic in 1 week deadline. 1 week deadline is not enough, Madam Chair, and risk exposing confidential, sensitive, protected information. This is something, while taking time away from the very witnesses who are here, to help us to do our job better. We can do better, if we can work together. And the amendments, we are not opposing, what they are saying. We also want to work together to betterment for the health of Canadians. Madam Chair, I'm not finishing yet. This is something, we didn't talk too much because, they just, in the questions, when I just want to let Canadians know when the witnesses are here, this is routinely happening, the motion is coming from, and then they, start reading it. We were not ready. So if they give us time, we'll bring the amendments. We can work together. We want to work together, but they just blame us. We are not hiding anything. I just want to put on record, Madam Chair. But we also want to focus on the health of Canadians. But the opposition is saying that this is totally unacceptable. They are making scandals. When we last motion, we worked very well. When they did the same thing. When the witnesses were there, they put the motion, and then we work with them. Now the same thing happened again. But we want to work with them, but we need a time.
Point of order, Chair. You might find that this is not a point of order. However, it is brought up in very good faith. I understand that there's discussions happening between parties, and if you found the room disorderly, Madam Chair, today, I think it might have to do with the fact that parties have not been on the same page. We're trying to rectify that. I think it's, as I said, a good faith. Yes, for a few minutes. That's right.
I suspend the meeting. Okay. I just wanted, before anybody speaks further, we only have resources. I understand that all parties have been working on a resolution, which is good. We should be able to work together on these things. So if this is happening, the meeting is now resumed. I expect people to take their seats. Thank you. Now, the meeting was suspended. The last person speaking was Ms. Sidhu. I understand Ms. Sidhu. I understand we now have Ms. Chi on my list. Ms. Chi? I'm going on the list I have here. That's a list I must go on. Ms. Chi, are you prepared to speak, or shall I pass to the next person? Ms. Chi, I'm speaking. Are you ready to speak? Thank you very much. Ms. Chi, your name is the next on the list. If you wish to not use your time, I will go to the next person on the list. Will you use your time to speak?
Just adding my name to the list, Madam
Your
Chair.
name is already on the list, Ms. Chi. I've just called you.
No, after Peter speaks.
Ms. Chi, the list is you, then Mr. Fragus-Shadows. The clerk and I have set up a list here based on when people put up their hands. If you wish to pass, I will go to Mr. Fragus-Shadows because he's next. But then your name is not on the list, and again, until later on.
Oh, okay, yeah, I'm passing it to
You're passing
Mr.
it on to... You're exceeding your speaking time. Thank you. So I go to Mr. Fragus-Shadows.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I've already alluded to this, that I am not a full member of this committee, although I do follow its work because it is among one of the more important committees on Parliament Hill. How can it not be? Obviously, we're talking about health and healthcare, and obviously sometimes things go in a different path and politics take over. I would hope that we don't allow that as much as possible, and perhaps tonight is an exception, or maybe it's the rule. Again, I don't know this committee very well. Regardless, I do see the motion in front of me that Mr. Messier has put forward. It begins by asking that the committee order the production of the following documents, and so on and so forth. Then it continues with contribution agreements concluded with Canada Health Infoway relating to Prescribe IT. I will say that I will take the time after this meeting to make myself more familiar with the issue at hand. I know that Conservative colleagues have raised the issue in the House of Commons a few times now. I think media perhaps have followed the story. There's material there for me and other substitutes, frankly. I see Mr. Grant with me and Dr. Hanley. Perhaps they're also not... all of us can take the time to bring ourselves up to speed, and I'm sure we will. But from a procedural perspective, this first part, I can't comment on that. I can comment that this call for contribution agreements that have been concluded does present a challenge, because there would be, as I think Conservative colleagues know very well over 1,000 documents, thousands of documents perhaps. This is how production orders work. And when you call for those documents, because the country is bilingual, you need to have translation be carried out. That will add an enormous amount of time to the work that public servants are tasked with. They could be doing, in place of that work, Madam Chair, other things in service of Canadians. I have not heard in the House of Commons, I have not heard today, how assigning that responsibility to public servants is going to advance the agenda of healthcare in this country. Across from me, I see Dr. Strauss, who comes from the region I'm from, southwestern Ontario. I know he cares about healthcare. I know that he, and will perhaps disagree on certain aspects of health policy. However, I know he will agree that public servants play a very important role in the administration of our healthcare system. How can he defend a motion that would absolutely tie up the public service, not just producing documents. It is down, and I promise I wasn't baiting him to speak. It was mostly a rhetorical question, but if he wishes to get on the record, I guess he's going to get on the record. That's his right. How can he get behind a motion that calls for, among other things, public servants to spend an enormous amount of time, hours upon hours, at the very least, could be much longer, often it is with production orders, to the result, of course, would be to have them look in another direction when it comes to what their main responsibility is, which is helping to administer Canada's public health system. That's the first point. There's other things that are unclear here to me, too. A record of intellectual property developed under Prescribe IT. Again, I'm relatively new to the committee. I'm not quite sure why that would be of interest, but colleagues across the aisle can share that with me. And adoption data broken down by province. Where could we get this data from exactly is the question that comes immediately to mind. Regardless, Madam Chair, let me say something else, and it does relate to the motion at hand before colleagues across the aisle accuse me of trying to distract from the matter. I was very much looking forward to sitting in today in place of Dr. Ellison. The reason is because we heard witnesses passionate on any number of things, beginning with Diabetes Canada. Mr. Thibault kindly mentioned London, where I'm from, city that I have the honor of representing in the House of Commons. He mentioned Banting House. I was glad that he did so. Banting House does tremendous work. That first part of the meeting opened up what I thought. It created momentum for the second part, which was to focus on an issue that is, I think, important to all of us, and that's pharmaceutical sovereignty in this country. This is something that, coming out of the pandemic, all of us need to think much more about. I know the government is seized with carrying out that goal. The pandemic left us with many lessons, and you, with your expertise in medicine, Madam Chair, you've been very, very clear for years now about the need to prepare this country for all sorts of realities from a healthcare perspective. But the pandemic leaves us with many lessons, as I say. One glaring one is the need to ensure pharmaceutical sovereignty. We saw what happened to other democracies. We saw what happened at the outset of the pandemic.
I would like to say that we are debating the motion,
yes, and I'm getting
there's leeway in debate,
I know.
Let's just focus on the motion.
I appreciate your brief indulgence there, Madam Chair. I will bring it back, I promise you, and I was about to, only to say that the pandemic left us with that lesson about pharmaceutical sovereignty. We were hearing from witnesses, articulate witnesses, experts in their field. I saw colleagues around the table engaged and seized with the issue. But all of a sudden, this motion, which had nothing to do with that second part of the meeting, as I understand it, came up. And that could have come up at any other time. There is, I believe, of course there is, every committee has them. There is a steering committee where that matter could have been addressed. Not in this one. Okay, well, I learned things, I'm learning as I go here. Leave that aside for just a moment. That could have been raised. That could have been the substance of the motion could have been addressed in any other avenue. There's many different avenues that could have allowed for the Conservatives to reach what they're trying to apparently reach. But we lost witnesses as a result. Witnesses took the time out of their day to be here. In the case of Ms. Michaud, I'm not sure where she was traveling from, but it took her the entire day of planning and all of these things. And I'm bringing it back, I promise. The point is that what do we have in front of us? We don't have a meeting in front of us. We have Mr. Mazier's motion in front of us, which, again, on contribution agreements concluded, I'm not sure how that advances, and maybe he can explain it for me. Again, I'm sitting in today at the committee. Maybe he can explain how the production of thousands of documents will advance the public interest for his constituents, for my constituents, for Dr. Strauss's, for all of our constituents. I don't see it. I don't see it, but I hope to be informed on the subject. I heard Ms. Chi, who has done excellent work as a parliamentary secretary, navigating at this committee a very complex set of priorities that the committee has identified in its wisdom as important, as vital to take up. She was making a number of points, interrupted along the way, unfortunately. I hope that in the time that we have remaining, that we don't have that happen again. That would be my hope. We will see what happens. I know that she's next on the list, Madam Chair, but I'll conclude my initial intervention here by simply saying that I would love to hear an answer from Conservative colleagues on how the production of thousands of documents that will tie up the public service for not just hours and hours, as I said before, but for much longer, I think, if we want to be honest, how that advances the public interest, how that does anything to advance what this committee is doing. This committee has a mandate from Parliament to take up matters of healthcare and health policy. We will see where things go. I turn it to, well, obviously back to you, Madam Chair. I think Ms. Chi wants to get on the record.
No, Ms. Chi is on the record.
Well, she wanted to be on the list, yeah, and I think she is. There you go.
I'm keeping us on the list, Mr. Fagiscatos, with the help of the clerk. The next on the list is Mr. Strauss.
Thank you. I'm just so eager to answer my long-winded friend's questions. When you blow $300 million, you need to find out how you blew it so you don't blow it again. And at the last committee meeting, we found out they're planning on giving the same totally incompetent, possibly corrupt organization, Canada Health Infoway, another $50 million in their pivot operation. I think we could save $350 million by getting to the bottom of this and not making that sort of mistake again. As for the time it takes to translate, I think you have a Minister of Artificial Intelligence. Perhaps he would be aware that we can do AI translate now. It takes 5 minutes. It shouldn't take any time at all. I think Canadians want us to get to the bottom of this. And last thing I'll say, there's like 50 people in this room. You all only have one life. It's such a crying shame that we're spending it listening to very long speeches in order to prevent the production of this document. I once again saw the Prime Minister in a scrum explain that he needs to have majorities on committees so that he can prevent filibusters, which his own team is doing right now in order to hide a $300 million scandal. Thank you, Chair.
Before we go any further, I will let you know that we have resources only to the time I told you earlier on. I would like to point out to this committee that we are speaking to the motion on the floor. And we've already decided that the motion is supposed to be here. It is here. We need to speak to the motion. I also think that the issue of resources was brought up. Is this the best way to use our resources? My question is this. Is this the best way to use resources? This committee has spent every single meeting going 1.5, 2 hours overtime just because we have resources, spinning its wheels, doing all kinds of things. I would like to see, like everybody does, that we respect the role of the standing committee. A standing committee is supposed to get work done. This is in order. I would like people to speak to the motion. Ms. Chi.
Is it working? Yep. Thank you, Chair. I think, I really appreciate my colleagues' comments around, diverting time away from, the study that was on schedule. It's experienced many forms of delays. Unfortunately, our witnesses we couldn't finish the round of questioning, and it happened again. We've seen it time and time again. And on this motion as well, I must say, we are the Standing Committee of Health. And as members, we all agreed to the mandate, the essence of what the committee does. We are here to examine programs and policies that matters to health of the nation. I don't know about folks around the table. When you have a motion that calls the production of paper for thousands of pages, details that pours into data, numbers. We have committees for that, Madam Chair. We have committees exactly for that. So actually, it puzzles me that why the Conservative members continue to use this committee to hunt for information where they can perhaps hunt elsewhere, and we can actually get back to the agenda of the Health Committee to finish the agreed upon schedule of finishing the Liberal study, pharmaceutical sovereignty. So that's the first point I really want to make. Second is, my colleagues here, really, we're staying, as you say, Chair, extra time, extra hours. And I think it's what is the respect of members' time as well, right? When someone brings forward a motion that interrupts witnesses' time, that I'll come back to the motion. I will come back to the motion.
Thank you.
So, if we want to talk about, I'm sure colleagues across the aisle has an interest in the matter, which is the interoperability piece on the data. Prescribe it is I guess part of the larger effort around this. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the larger digital health context in which this committee is we could consider. Because if we want to understand Prescribe It as a program, I don't think we can just understand it on its own. There's a larger picture. There's a larger roadmap that as a nation we need to consider. So, the report published by last week, earlier this week we called upon Canada Health Infoway to answer questions around the program. There is a larger shared pan-Canadian interoperability roadmap, which makes it clear that the real issue is much broader than just one program, one data set. And I think physicians around this table who have experienced frustrations around data, interoperability of systems, and sharing patient data and systems will agree that the real issue here is, we need to build that system. We need to build that system in which the digital tools actually connect to each other. Whether information can move safely and meaningfully across settings, and whether patients and providers are being served by systems that work together rather than against each other. And that's the broader theme and frame I want us to keep in mind as we consider this topic. And that's why I'm going to keep returning to the roadmap as I speak about this particular program. And Prescribe It matters in that discussion, not because the roadmap is a report about Prescribe It. It's not. The roadmap is a report about the larger structure of interoperability in Canada. And the report also does make reference to Prescribe It in ways that are revealing. In the appendix of the report, it notes that Canada has made important progress in integrating community pharmacy and primary care prescribers, specifically citing this program. Elsewhere, it indicates the deployment of the program was expected to expand to support hospital discharge prescriptions. And in its stakeholder discussions, Madam Speaker, it notes that Infoway has discussed the potential value of digital tools, including with various organizations. But it's it's something that we I think together in the larger system, we all want an integrated system, as we heard from today's witness from the Pharmacy Association. And with that, Madam Speaker, I move that the meeting do now adjourn.
All right, non-debatable motion to adjourn. Everyone seems to agree? Yes, that's right. I hear nobody saying no. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
you.